Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas and his Catholic faith. This is day 283, so let's get started. We're covering today questions 51 and 52 of the supplement to the Summa, that is, of the impediment of error and of the impediment of the condition of slavery. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code SUMMA10, and so here we go. Article 1. Whether error of its very nature is an impediment to matrimony, that which hinders a cause also hinders its effect. The marital consent is the cause of marriage, and since error or ignorance in a choice can make that choice involuntary, such error of its nature becomes an impediment to marriage. For example, if you believed that the woman in front of you was Jane when it was actually Susie, when you voiced your consent to marry Susie thinking it was Jane, then your consent to Susie was not by choice, and therefore is an impediment to the matrimony. St. Thomas concludes, it is possible according to the natural law for error to void marriage. Article 2, whether every error is an impediment to matrimony. Since in matrimony one gives of themselves physically over to the other and a bond of fidelity to one spouse, if either of these components, becoming one flesh or choosing one spouse, is hindered by error, the marital bond does not take place. Such if again you thought you were marrying Jane, but was actually Susie in front of you, or if you do not have the right to give over your body to the other, and the other doesn't realize this, because you are a bond servant, you're a slave, these errors in the consent would invalidate the marriage. We then turn to question 52 of the impediment of the condition of slavery. First of all, what are we talking about here when we discuss slavery? We are discussing a condition of positive law, so enacted by law, civil law, whereby a man who owes another, for example, a large sum of money and cannot pay it could contractually enter the service of the other for a period of time in order to pay those debts. Slavery can also be considered a punishment for a crime, like being sentenced to work in some prison for a period of time until one has made satisfaction for their crimes. Thus, although according to nature, man is equal, according to those laws, to a law a nation may enact, one could become an indentured servant or could be sentenced to a prison-like state analogous to slavery. As Aquinas puts it, a slave is his master's chattel in matters superadded to nature, but in natural things, all are equal. So we turn then to Article 1, whether the condition of slavery is an impediment to matrimony. If it is unknown to the other contracting party, then since in marriage one becomes a debtor physically to their spouse, if the spouse does not know that the person they are marrying cannot pay that debt, since they are under the control of another, then such an error in consent would void the marriage, as we've already mentioned. In St. Thomas's words, in the marriage contract, one party is bound to the other in the matter of paying the debt. Wherefore, if one who thus binds himself is unable to pay the debt, ignorance of this inability on the side of the party to whom he binds himself voids the contract. Article 2, whether a slave can marry without his master's consent. Natural and divine law cannot be thwarted by positive law. Thus, a slave can give the marital consent without the permission of his or her master. Aquinas' argument is the following. A slave is bound to obey his master in those things which his master can command lawfully, and just as his master cannot lawfully command him not to eat or sleep, so neither can he lawfully command him to refrain from marrying. Article 3, whether slavery can supervene to marriage. Can a married man then enter into a state of slavery as a husband? And a word from our author, everyone can give another that which is his own. Now the husband is his own master since he is free. Therefore he can surrender his right to another. Further, a slave can marry without his master's consent. Therefore a husband can in like manner subject himself to a master without his wife's consent. Article 4 in our last article, whether children should follow the condition of their father. The question is, if the father is sold into slavery, or he voluntarily makes himself a slave to pay his debts, let's say, and the mother is free, to whom does the child go with, live with, inherit the condition of? St. Thomas believes, although the father is a more noble principle than the mother, nevertheless the mother provides the substance of the body, and it is to this that the condition of slavery attaches. So in his day, what he's saying is, according to the laws he was familiar with, honors, franchise, inheritance, and so forth come to a child through the father, but freedom or slavery would be determined by the condition of the mother. And with that, we conclude a possibly less relevant to the everyday questions, but part of the supplement of the Summa nonetheless. We have finished covering questions 51 and 52 of the supplement to the Summa, that is, of the impediment of error and of the impediment of the condition of slavery. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.